I initially gave this talk at TEDx Youth here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and while I wait for the video of that presentation to go live on the TEDx website, I wanted to share the content with you today in case you were feeling a little bit challenged by your decision to choose your own path. I want to show you why that's hard, but at the end of the day, undeniably worth it. This is Uncharted. Grow up, go to college, get married, buy a house, have kids. Our entire lives feel scripted before we even get started. Those key milestones are celebrated, like weddings, a new baby. We celebrate and encourage highly specific transitions. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, take a walk through a greeting card aisle and you'll quickly see that the cards that are on display celebrate only a few key milestones or transitions in someone's life. Rarely, though, do we celebrate when those choices fall outside the norm. Society appears, when you analyze the evidence, to favor the status quo. But what happens when you are not the status quo? I grew up in a really small town with really fantastic parents who, while they were young, when they had my sister and I, they did their absolute best to give us everything that they possibly could. And not only that, they told both my sister and I that we could be whatever we wanted in life so long as we were willing to try, have the belief in ourselves, and work hard. So I grew up quite honestly believing I could do anything. If someone had told me when I was a child that I could be a superhero, I would have believed them. And honestly, to this day, I probably still would believe them, because I think we all can be superheroes in our own right. High school, however, began a different kind of story for me. As you can see in these photos, high school was a bit of an interesting time for me. Between the knee socks and the very unflattering gym uniforms to the very short haircut, I wasn't so easy on myself. And unfortunately, I wasn't the only one. I had a really hard time fitting in. I had entered a brand new school at the beginning of grade 9. I didn't know anyone, and I also was really shy. I didn't have a super outgoing personality at the time. I had a very difficult time standing up and saying who I was and trying to make connections with other people. And to top it all off, and started into grade 10 with a rather unfortunate thing hanging over my head. The I Hate Erin fan club was founded at the end of grade 9, and honestly, it forever changed the course of my life. And I know you might be listening to this and you might be thinking, well, that sounds a little dramatic. It was just high school. Except that when you have a group of people who bond together over their mutual distaste of yourself, it can literally change and shape and morph your entire outlook on life. After this happened, I knew that I needed to find an escape in the high school. I needed to find a group of people that I could actually be in community with, and I needed to find my tribe. And this wasn't even something that I necessarily did intentionally. It was just a byproduct of the I Hate Erin fan club. So in grade 10, I decided to join the pastoral committee. Now, the pastoral committee, for those of you that may not have attended a Catholic high school, is essentially a group of people who help plan a lot of the Catholic events at the school, a lot of the masses, the special celebrations, etc. It was through this pastoral committee that I then joined my first missionary experience. Now, a missionary experience is essentially a group of people who travel to a certain part of the world to either help out or to raise awareness back in their hometowns about the state and the conditions that other people live in. So at 16, I boarded my first flight and I flew all the way to a little village called Yamasa in the middle of the Dominican Republic. It was as remote as you get over there, and my family that I lived with didn't speak English, and it was quite the experience. As someone that was only, that had come from a town of 9,000 people, to land in this foreign location was definitely ridden with culture shock. As part of our missionary experience, we also visited sugarcane slave camps on the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And it was in these sugarcane slave camps that I had a really profound moment where I realized that the only thing I wanted to do was to go home. I wanted to return home. I wanted to go back to see my parents. I wanted to have all of the luxuries and conveniences of my modern life around me. And I also realized that for the people that lived in the sugarcane slave camp, this was home. This thought was both profound because it put so much into perspective, but it also was very sad. And I walked through that sugarcane slave camp with my sunglasses on to hide the tears from the children. Now that said, I know that sounds like a really tragic moment, but the perspective came not from experiencing something that was tragic or was outside of what I was used to, but rather because I looked at these people as being shackled by their circumstances, but these people were filled with joy. They had so much happiness and love for the life that they had. And that made me realize that I might have had a few things mixed up. In Western society, our shackles are often placed on us by our obligations. So this can look like the things that you kind of feel like you have to do, even if they don't particularly line up with what you want to do. And doing what we think we should do brings us often no joy at all. So when we live a life where we're just doing what we think we should do to fit in, and we're just doing what we think we should do to meet the status quo, we can often end up in a really terrible place in our life. We can often end up not even knowing who we are, even when we've spent a tremendous amount of time with each other. But being different is really scary. I don't know about you, but if you can relate at all to being a little different, you can probably also relate to the fact that it is terrifying to be different. It is terrifying to step outside the status quo and do anything that falls outside of the norm. And it doesn't help that the voices in our head are super loud. The voices in our head tell us things like, I can't do this. Who am I to want what I want? And what if everyone else is right? Although some of the voices we hear are shaped by ourselves, many of the voices we hear are actually shaped by other people. The key to carving your own path and being outside of the status quo and being okay with that is knowing which is which. So when they told me that I was too young to travel alone, I got on the plane and I went to 16 different countries. When they said I needed a normal job, I founded my own company. When they said my voice and my opinions didn't matter, I got on the stage anyway. I got married and I got divorced. I bought a house and sold it. Every time I chose me, I found joy. And while society may not be celebrating my choices, I am. I have her. I have a calling. I absolutely love what I do, and I can freely explore the world. I get to write my own story. Now, it's your turn. Step 1, figure out what you want. Not what your mom wants for you, or your dad wants for you, or your aunt, your uncle, your grandparent, your friends. What do you want? Notice the times when you cover. So covering is a phenomenon that sociologists believe occurs when we downplay our differences from the mainstream. What are you shying away from? If someone says, hey, you're really into video games, and you're afraid of looking a little too geeky or nerdy, so you cover and you say, no, it's just it's a pastime. It's something I like to do. Notice that and ask yourself why. Another question to ask yourself often: is this what I want? If it's not what you want, don't be afraid to let it go. Drop it, move on, change your course. Step 2, ditch the fear. Now this is a really big one for people. I want to enable you to value courage over security. Security looks like a lot of different things for a lot of different people, but courage looks kind of the same. It basically means stepping out and doing something that you may not have otherwise done for fear of failing. Cozy up to the unknown. Get comfortable, get a warm cup of tea, and cozy up to it. I promise you, it is life-changing. Step 3, look at your worst case scenario. Now I know what you're thinking. You probably don't want to do that because that will bring on some of that fear. However, I want you to seriously look at what is the worst thing that could possibly happen. Drill down, keep going. Even if it starts to feel scary, keep going, because I promise you, when you boil it all down, the worst case scenario may not be all that bad. So when we start trusting our own intuition and our inner voice, and we know we'll be okay with our choices no matter what, we can write our own stories, even if they aren't celebrated. Even if you can't find that greeting card in the greeting card aisle to celebrate the moment that you're going through. Even if they are different. Even when we make mistakes. And when we do, when we choose ourselves and we write our own stories, we will find freedom, choice, adventure. Because when you live life for you, the shackles disappear and everything is worth celebrating.